H. Haeger, Haeger, of 1725 Blair in Lansing, 48910. Frank's phone number is 482-6477. The recording was made at the Oldsmobile History Center on June 20th, 1990 by Jim Walkinshaw. This is tape number 1 of 2 tapes. Okay, Frank, if you could start with your name and your address and phone number, please.
Okay, my name is Frank Haeger, and I live at 1725 Blair, Lansing, 48910. My telephone number is 482-6477.
Okay. Then if you would just take us back to where you started and what you were doing and when that was.
Going back to the year of 1940.
Okay.
I had graduated from high school and I had worked a year for the federal government. And at that time I didn't know whether I wanted to continue my education or possibly get into an apprenticeship. And it worked out that the Oldsmobile was starting a new apprentice program at that time. And my father was a general supervisor for Oldsmobile,
Okay.
and I believe some of his influence helped me get into the starting class.
All right.
At that time, I believe there was 5 people that was hired to start in this apprenticeship. 3 of the fellows were graduates of Lansing Central. 2 of them were from Lansing St. Mary's at that time.
Okay.
Would you like the names?
Sure, if you can remember
Okay.
them.
Well, one of the fellows, he was one of the top people in the industrial course at Lansing Central, was Charles Tews.
Okay.
And the other one was Robert Sheppy, who was not in the industrial course, nor was I.
Okay.
The 2 fellows from Lansing St. Mary's was John Cosgrove and got to think for just a second.
That's okay.
John, his name has left me
That's
completely.
all right.
Okay. However, there was five people in the original.
No.
In the original course. The other man was Gerald McEwen.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
Was the apprentice course in a specific area?
At that time, the apprentice course was in a specific area. Actually, it was in the front end of Building 33, as I recall.
All right. Okay.
That was right next to 28, yes.
Yeah.
And I believe the corporation had spent about $500,000
Really?
in buying equipment. And at that time, they had all the basic tool room type equipment.
All right.
And they had a gentleman by the name of William Petzinger, who previously was a plant manager at Real Motors, and Bill had hired in with General Motors and was at Oldsmobile, and he was the instructor for the 5 people.
Okay.
At that time, our starting rate was 40 cents an hour
Okay.
with a 5-cent raise every 900 hours, which was approximately 6 months.
Okay.
And this was supposedly to be a 4-year course. and with the idea that after the group got started, the company was going to add another 5 people and then progressively keep adding people to build up their skilled trades personnel in the tooling or tool making industry.
So it was basically a tool room,
Tool making, yes.
Tool making apprenticeship. Okay.
Had and Mr. Petzinger was a man in probably his early 60s, just prior to retirement.
All right.
Now, it's my opinion that he was not really the right man for the job. Inasmuch as you're taking 5 young men just out of high school and you're with the instructor being close to retirement.
Perhaps semi-retired.
Yeah, and now he was a very intelligent man, very intelligent. And he had a very short fuse for the younger people. Yeah. And here he was having, he had 5 people with only 1 man that had a little bit of background in the industry. Mm-hmm. And the other 4, we were completely, new to it. It was a new thing. And I felt that his approach to the training was a little bit beyond. Maybe for the 1 man, why it was fine. Yeah. However, for the other 4 of us, why, in other words, he didn't start us down at the first step and move on progressively.
You fellows had never seen a lathe or any of that.
I didn't know, had no idea what a lathe was, or a milling machine or a grind. Yeah. However, Bill was a very, like I say, a very smart man, and his long suit was mathematics. Okay. And at that time, part of the training was we had to go down to LCC and for the mathematics courses on our own time, of course. Right. I believe we went twice a week, as I recall.
No, LCC didn't exist.
It was Lansing Central at that time. It was the old Lansing Central Industrial course. Mm-hmm. And we went down there twice a week, and there again, Bill was very strong in logarithms and things such as that. I find out in my later life in the tooling biz that logarithms was not really necessary for the things, and I thought that he spent too much time on that type of thing. Okay. The trigonometry and things like that, yes, we did use. Yeah. So anyway, we went along for about 6 months. And
excuse me, Frank. You spent time then at the plant with machinery?
We spent 40 hours there.
Okay. And then jumped back to the central?
We would go down to Lansing Central like on Tuesday or Thursday night, like
at night.
7 to 9 or something such as that. Okay. But there was never any overtime. I remember my paychecks used to be $15.60.
Just like clockwork.
Just like clockwork, 40 cents for the Social Security. Yeah. Yeah. Every Friday afternoon we used to take them down to J.W. Knapp's and cash that check. Okay. And it was something else.
Now, were you guys part of the union at that time, or were you exempt from it?
At that time, we were exempt from the union.
All right.
Yes, we were called what they called indentured apprentices.
All right.
And after 6 months, then they added an additional 5 people. Okay. And I believe Floyd Wright was one of those additional 5. Again, it was kind of a mixture of fellas. I don't remember the name.
Did they mix you guys together, the
yes.
first 5 and the second 5?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. However, as an instructor, why he was, you know, he tried, I'm sure that he did, he tried to advance the advanced work he would give the older ones. But we all, you know, we spent so much time on each machine.
Okay.
Like we would spend the time on the lathe and the mill and
You'd make something.
the grinder operations, and Bill would get jobs through the plant. A lot of them were the so-called undesirable jobs, you know, that the tool room didn't want to do, why they'd send them over there. And as I say, in about approximately 6 months, another 6 people were added.
Okay.
So at that time, after we got into the program a little further, I think that somebody in the management group found that they needed a younger man as an instructor.
Okay.
So with the possibility of Mr. Petzinger retiring, they brought in Marv Katke from the engineering group.
Mm-hmm.
Marv was a younger man, and he understood the younger people, and he just fit in there just perfectly. Well, everybody kind of, if they had a problem, why they ended up taking it to Marv, and of course, I think Bill could see that he was losing a little bit of it, and because of the frequency of the people going to Marv for get their questions answered. But anyway, things worked out fairly good until Pearl Harbor Day.
Okay.
And at that time, the management felt that they could better utilize the equipment, because it was all new equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and they could better utilize the equipment that was purchased for the apprentice training program, and move that equipment over to Building 40, and also that would make that spot available for what ended up was a 20 millimeter gun plant.
Okay.
So in the process, we moved over there, and they continued to add people to the apprentice group. And at that time, we were integrated with the tool makers in Building 40.
Okay. So now your work.
Now
experience is
we're
there.
out of 33, and we're in Building 40.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, over there, we came under different supervision. Mr. Petzinger, as I recall, I think he went up to Building 40 for a short time, and I know Marv Katke did. Marv went up there
Mm-hmm.
as a process person on the Kettering engine.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, from that point on, after the processing was over, Marv went on to take over as the superintendent
Mm-hmm.
of the Kettering.
So did you still go downtown to the classes?
At that time, they started. It was a little after that. We still went down. I would say for about 2 years we went down there to Old Central, and then they started the education and training program at Oldsmobile, and some of that work was moved over there under the education and training instructors.
All right.
I remember myself, I know I also went out to Michigan State at night and took some design courses out there to kind of supplement the voids I have had in as a tool maker. However, we went along there in pretty good shape. Of course, the apprentice training group was dissolved and as a unit of its own, and it was integrated with Building 40.
When the education thing came in? Or?
Education and training was part of it. I mean, they came on a lot stronger, and of course at that time, with the education and training group, I think that management found that there was a good potential for experienced people. So then they start expanding their apprentice training program. So then they went into the machine repair portion and the electrical and that, and some of the plant engineering activities. And
so
that was kind of the infancy of the whole program right there.
So each group that needed apprentices kind of, quote, ran their own program, so to speak.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Each one's like the plant engineering trades were all under the plant engineering, and of course then the die group got into it, and Lawrence Ginther, I think, was the die man. You know, he was a superintendent of the die room, and Lawrence did a super job of getting, you know, his die group started, and found out that he was going to get some good employees out of it.
Frank, prior to the 1940 starting of the apprentice program, what did they do? Do you know?
I think at that time well, there was no apprentices, at least.
How did they get people that followed other people?
Going back years ago, I know my father, he served an apprenticeship at Lufkin Rule.
Oh, all right.
At that time, you know, that's how the old the journeyman term came about, and kind of that time after you served your apprenticeship, where you were out on the road and you went from plant to plant or whatever, wherever they could had a few dollars, they could hire you. I know his experience was he worked for Cadillac and some of the other plants.
So the apprentices in the early days eventually became journeymen after they had been in a variety of places and done a variety of things.
That seemed to be. All right. Yeah, of course it you know, would take much longer. I mean, you know, to really learn the trades. But
so this was kind of the first, what I'll call, formal program?
This was the first formal program. Yeah, that I guess that would be a better way. Okay. Now Ford had the Ford Trade School. That was the only other one that I knew of prior to that. Now maybe some of the other divisions had their foot in the door on the apprenticeship, but that was the Oldsmobile program, that, as I recall. Okay. So anyway, I guess.
Well, did the war affect that at all?
The war, yes. A lot of the younger fellas, you know. Well, most of us got deferments because of being into a industry, and you know, we're all very concerned. In fact, I recall, you know, I ended up, my own case, I didn't go into the service until 1944. I think I had deferments up until that time. But then we got tight on manpower, and then finally they picked ourselves up. But
did you get through your apprentice program before you?
I finished the program before I finished the program before I went into the service. I just finished, and as soon as I had finished, I was off into the Uncle Sam.
And that program got you your journeyman's card.
That program got my journeyman's card.
All right.
So as I recall, I'm just trying to think, when I was getting 40 cents an hour, I believe a journeyman was getting $1.25 an hour, or something like that.
Difference.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And of course, what they had then, of course, the starting of the war effort, they had what they called upgraders,
Okay.
which were bringing people in off the productive floors and putting them on specific machines, and then they would leave that. Now, they would never leave that machine. If they came in as a lathe operator, for example, they'd stay a lathe operator.
Oh, okay.
And it did cause a lot of problems, I guess, in as much as the rates were, the people that had been in on the apprenticeships, where they were much more knowledgeable than the upgraders.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall that at one time, why we complained, and at that time Bud Brandl was the personnel guy.
Yeah.
And I was, and I don't know how I got it, but I was elected spokesman for the apprentice to go over and talk to Mr. Brandl. Well, going over and talking to Mr. Brandl about wages was not my bag, but he kind of watched those dollars. And I, as it worked out, I knew him fairly well, because he was a fairly good friend of my parents.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess that's why I was elected, because, for that reason.
So did it work or didn't it?
No, it didn't work.
It didn't work.
No money. But anyway, we finally got done, and I think we got up to, as I recall, it was $1.25 an hour or something like that.
Okay, that's after you graduated.
Yeah, after we graduated.
Uh-huh.
But in later, when I think back about it, it was a terrific program,
Yeah.
and I think that, as I recall, out of the first 5, there were 3 of the people that went on supervision.
Mm-hmm.
One fella, one fella passed away, so it was a, as I say, a good nucleus for starting in industry.
Yeah.
But the people in Building 40, they were very helpful in wanting to help us, the older
Okay.
tool makers, and they helped the younger apprentices. And
There wasn't any animosity?
no
towards the
animosity
folks.
at all, none whatsoever.
Mhm.
We did have an old Scotchman down there who was a general supervisor by the name of Frank Bannerman,
Okay.
and he was one of those hard-nosed guys, but he was an excellent mechanic, and
Uh-huh.
he understood young people.
Really?
Yeah, he understood them, and he knew how to handle them, and he was really a great person when you think about it. At that time, why, as I recall, in the tool room, I believe Athey,
Brian
Athey was I don't know whether he was a superintendent or general supervisor,
All right.
but there was Athey and Jim Reinbold, and I don't know whether you recall Jim Reinbold.
No.
They were both on about the same level. I think, as I recall, Jim Reinbold had more to do with the area maintenance, such as a fixture repair and the tool grinding, tool sharpening, and Brian Athey had the tool room portion of it.
Okay.
And they would kind of flip-flop back and forth. Athey at that time, when the war came along, why he went upstairs in the processing end of it, and I believe Jim Reinbold came back and took over the tool room.
You know, we don't know much about either of those two guys. How did you know them or work with them enough to know how they did
Brian, I'm pretty sure that he came from Real years ago.
Yeah.
Jim Reinbold, I do not know anything about.
How did they manage the business? Enough indication there.
A little. They were very, very firm, I'll say that.
Okay.
And I think that the detail of the jobs and that, they some of the things got kind of lost. I thought that some of their supervision underneath should be taking care of that portion of it rather than them, such as running to the clock and things such as that. Now Athey would be right there as a general supervisor. He was right there watching that clock.
Standing by the clock?
Yeah, just standing right outside of the office, And Reinbold was he was a very, very strong person with words. He would
coarse language?
Well, no, his language was pretty good, but I mean, he would make your decisions in a lot of cases.
Okay.
For example, community chest, you'd go in there with the idea that and he'd have you all signed up. I mean, they'll figure all down. All you had to do was sign the slip.
Oh, yeah.
It's all done. Yeah. Now, Athey was different. He was not that type of a person.
All right.
So, but he was a sticker on detail. Athey was.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Frank Bannerman worked underneath him, and he had two very good supervisors, a fellow gentleman by the name of Frank Ross and another one by the name of Van Dusen.
Okay.
And then there was, at that time, of course, the tool room was going through transition to get into a three-shift mode for the war, and I think that Roy McBride, he was made a general foreman, and Bannerman was a general foreman, and I do not recall who the...
Had those fellows kind of come up through the ranks as toolmakers and then worked into those positions?
They had. Frank Ross was, he was just a typical nice old guy. He loved to have the young fellows. In fact, he was Pat Belgown. You remember Pat Belgown?
Yeah.
Well, he was his father-in-law.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he used to have the apprentices out like on a Saturday afternoon, a couple times a year out to his house, and they'd shoot trap. Well, we did it on the corner of Waverly and Saginaw. We'd go out there and shoot trap right there. He lived right there on the corner there, right diagonally across from the Waverly Golf Course.
Okay.
But he was a nice old guy.
Can you describe kind of how the tool room was arranged when you first...
Well, when we first went into Building 40, as I recall it, there was a fence about just about midpoint, and the tool room was up at the north end of the building, and the machine repair group was down in the south end.
Okay.
They were under Doc White, I believe.
Okay. And you had a fence between the two?
There was a fence between the two. Well, just about as we got into the war effort a little bit more, we found that the tooling end of it expanded more so than what the machine repair portion did, and finally the tool room finally took over the south end of the Building 40.
So you got the whole building by the time the war was over.
Yeah, at that time, you recall, as the it was open up above.
Oh, you had the openings to the second floor still?
Yeah, you remember the opening up there?
I don't remember those.
Don't you?
No, because I wasn't there. They were filled by then.
Yeah, at
So-
that time there was just kind of a walk around upstairs in the building, and the offices were on the outer perimeter,
All right.
and the inside was
Just a big
went right up to the ceiling. See?
Did that promote any interesting problems?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a morale booster.
Oh, was it?
For the people downstairs to be able to see what was going on up above.
And I assume you must have had some females up there on the second
There
floor.
was a few there, yeah, there was a few there, and of course with a handrail around, why, that
right.
made everything a little bit more attractive. However, I don't recall,
Yeah.
when they did do it, of course they reorganized the tool room, and it was not a very good arrangement because of the heat treating and things like that, why the fumes were
Just up through
going up through the opening, and I'm sure it was not very desirable upstairs.
Well, when you eventually got the whole building as the tool room, how were things organized in the building then? What was where, kind of? Where was your bench floor and your lathe floor?
Well, the bench floor was way down on the extreme north end of the building.
All right.
Yeah, and of course, it seems to me like at that time we had, I recall, as I recall it, where you could smoke only in the restrooms. The restrooms in the heat treat, we used to go down there, but everybody was smoking at that time, you know. It was
sure.
the place was blue practically.
Was it really?
You walked in there, just horrible, just a horrible.
But nobody thought a thing about it.
No, nobody thought a thing about it. But as far as the arrangements of the equipment, the bench floor was up on the north end. The grinding floor was on the east side of Building 40.
Okay.
And the lathe floor was down towards where the machine repair used to be located.
Sort of in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heat treat?
And the heat treat was on the southeast corner, approximately where it is right now.
All right.
But
So that must have been when it arrived there. Is that when it got there?
just about. But they had, the heat treat is, to me, that's a course in metallurgy, really. It was very interesting. I thought the heat treat was a very interesting thing during my apprenticeship when we had to spend time in there. But you learn about steels, and to me, why the laboratory and the heat treat are just hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to learn all the things about steel, and I admire those people that had spent their time in there. But Ray Springer, I don't know whether you ever remember that name or not. He was kind of the general foreman down there, and of course he had Frank King. That worked. You probably remember Frank King, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think who the other fellow was. But it's
Well, what
kind of a trade in its own, really.
What happened after you went off to the war?
I went, yes, when I went back off the war and I came back and I said, well, I know, the company was on strike.
You came back in the strike?
We were going through the throes of the,
oh my Lord,
the long strike, and I recall, you mentioned about did we belong to the union? Well, I never did belong to the union, but
okay.
one of the things were on the UAW strike list was the veterans coming back. You know, they were going to get them some extra money or something like that. Well, in my case, it never happened.
Okay.
Yeah. But I waited it out till the strike was over, and then I went back. I thought, well, I'm going to go back for a short time, and I really wanted to get into the sales end of the business, the machinery sales.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I had in mind.
All right.
But I went back, and of course, I got interested in, as I say, the supervisory people was very helpful, and I think that about 1950, 50 or 51, we decided to build jet engines.
Okay, over Plant 3.
They had Plant 3,
Yeah.
and they made Lyle Salisbury the superintendent of that activity over there,
Okay.
and we set up a temporary situation over in 37, I believe it was, the high bay, the pilot
line?
yeah, pilot line over there in the high bay, and we Lyle, he picked the nucleus of his organization. One of them was Tom Regan, who was very knowledgeable about tooling and tool grinding habits and things such as that. Myself, he picked, I went out of the tool room with Lyle and went over into the pilot program. And I'm trying to think, let's see, Art Midgley, I think he went as well as a fixture person. So anyway, we probably was on the on that temporary line over there for about a year and a half.
Well, that long?
Yeah, and at that time, the equipment that was the engineering people had ordered upstairs, that was starting to come into the Plant 3 operation.
Okay.
So.
Did the Building 37 line, Frank, did it have just a few of everything, all the machines?
Very. Well,
or were you just grinding blades?
No, we were over in Shroud Department was I think it was in 26, if I'm not mistaken. It was up over the old plant protection.
Oh, okay.
Building 20.
Building 20 or 21.
Yeah, it's 20 or 21 in that general area there. Yeah, the Shroud group was over there, and no, they did more than grind blades, but everything was, everybody was learning at that time because it was completely new.
Were you trying to assemble the rotors?
No, we didn't get into the assembly. They did later on, but
not in the pilot.
No, the pilot, yes, they did. On the pilot, yes, they did.
Okay.
Yep.
Was that there in 37, or where was that?
As I recall, it was in 37, down at the north end, it seemed to me like it was down there. I know we were on a balcony in 37. We had the grinding room up there.
All right.
But everything, there maybe it was only 2 or 3 machines of a certain thing. There was about 11 different stages of
the discs that you had.
Yeah, the disc and the blades, of course, was causing lots of problems.
Yeah.
And
Had we have never done anything like that.
no, it was completely new. Apparently, that was a Pratt & Whitney engine, as I recall, and as it ended up, my father was instrumental in buying the equipment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He bought, when I say he,
Yeah.
he and he happened to be one of the persons in the department. And, but they did as you say, everything was new to everybody, and we had a lot of scrap and everything else. Of course, then there was other things coming up. We had the rocket engine going and that kind of stuff.
Had you gotten involved with any of that activity?
No, very little, Jim. Yeah. Yeah, all I can remember is Elmer Corbin was the key man over there.
Okay.
Yeah. That was over in the old 6 pine, wasn't it? Some saving meal.
Yeah, it was in 36, 38.
Yeah, somewhere in there. But, when I think about it, again, I hate to keep referring to my father, but he came down in 1931 from Saginaw to Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
And some of the names he brought with him was like Jim Hughes was one of his general foremen.
So he brought those people?
Emil Rohrbeck was one of his general foremen.
What was he doing in Saginaw, Frank?
He was the superintendent of the crankshaft. At that time, when General Motors, each division made their own crankshafts.
Somewhere other than?
Yeah, like Pontiac made their own, and Buick made their own, and Oldsmobile made their own.
So what was he doing in Saginaw?
Well, at that time it was the Saginaw crankshaft. It wasn't General Motors. And then General Motors, after they bought them out, they decided, well, we're going to have each division make their own crankshaft.
Prior to that?
Prior
they were
to-
all made in that little place?
Prior to that, I guess they were all made down there, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he happened to be the superintendent down there, and when they disbanded that operation down there, why, he had his choice of coming to any one of the car divisions. So he came to Oldsmobile, and he said he'd try it here and liked it, and then he brought the key people that he had in Saginaw down here.
Did the machinery also come with those folks?
I don't recall, Jim, that. I don't recall whether the machinery came, but at that time they used to do the balancing by snagging the crankshafts. I remember going out there. You'd go in Saginaw. You'd go out there and they'd do the balancing way. They'd snag those counterweights, and the sparks would be up to the ceiling. You had to be about a 225 pounder.
You were just manhandling?
Manhandling them. And that's what they did all day. Those guys. They earned their money.
Yeah, sure did.
But of course, when they came to Oldsmobile, they refined it and bought new equipment. And as I recall, my father and Emil Rohrbeck was very instrumental. They built the first polishing machine
For bearing polishing?
for polishing the bearings, and the corporation, they liked that, and in fact, I think the corporation got a patent on it, if I'm not mistaken. I know they had a lawsuit over it at later years with one of the companies. I don't know whether it was Kruger or one of the companies in Illinois, I think it was. But
Okay. Well, anyhow, so the jet thing was going in 37. Now, when it went to Plant 3, did you go with it, or?
we were the first ones.
Okay.
We were the first one. Lyle Salisbury was a superintendent and he had not only the tooling end of it, he had the machine repair. That was kind of the integrating the machine repair with the tooling. That was in its infancy then. And Lyle had Daryuran. He was one of the general foremen. Tom Regan was. And Ray Weir. You ever remember Ray Weir? And myself. I was in the tool room.
Okay.
But Ray Weir was a very small man, but he was very peppery, and he was very, very smart mechanic. He came from a truck and coach, I believe.
All right.
But he used to raise hell with those engineers. Oh boy, you know, he's the type of fellow that would walk in the door, in the swinging door. I remember him over there at Plant 3, and he would throw his hands in the air, you know, and he was very loud and boisterous, you know, and wanted everybody to know that he had a problem. And the poor engineer, whoever he was pointing for, I think he could just about shrunk underneath the table, you know. But everybody got to know Ray, and they just took him for such. But he was a smart, very mechanically minded. But that is, you know, the story. We were the first. The tool room was one of the first groups over there, because at that time we had the contractors in there setting equipment and things like that, and they needed small things done for them. So we kind of was
so
there.
The plant wasn't running really.
No, the plant wasn't running. In fact, it didn't run for, I'd say at least a year after that. The fact that the part of the building was still open.
Really?
At that time, yep, they were still building the building.
So what did they do? Start at the south and go to the north?
Yeah, I think we started, went south and went north. Yep. And then, you know, like every new program, why it just kind of comes on, and
Did you have a lot of quote startup problems, and can you remember?
oh
those kinds of
yeah,
issues?
we had the whole job was one problem, but you know, the blades, as I recall, was giving us unusual problems, and of course the shrouds, they were, you know, it was so much different than anything that we had worked on on automotive, that it was just kind of hard to digest. And of course there wasn't that many people that had machining experience that you know, knew how to approach it, because at that time we were trying to get the most qualified people in the job, and a lot of these people worked on, you know, assembly operations, you might say, and had no experience in the machining. But it went pretty good. Pat Belgown, I remember, he was a superintendent up on the blade floor. And Buell Sadler, he was on the shroud floor. And Bob Scott was down in the assembly end of it.
All right.
That was the three superintendents, and I guess they were superintendents. So then they reported to Del McRae. That was kind of the nucleus of the production group.
And you guys still reported to the Plant 1 tool room still at that point, or did you?
No, at that time we were divorced from Plant 1 completely.
You were divorced.
And Lyle had the Plant 3 group, and he was the top man and an excellent supervisor.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. I really admired him so much.
At this juncture, Frank, what were you?
I was a general foreman at that time. Yeah, I was a general foreman in the tool room.
Okay.
And then as we got through the jet program, Why, and the automotive started back up, that was in 1947, as I recall.
Oh, wait a minute.
No, wait a minute, no, I'm wrong. That was after that, yeah, as we got, that was in the 50s, yeah.
That would have been
Yeah,
sometime early,
yeah,
mid-50s.
probably about 54, 55. Seemed to me like the crankshafts. Well, I recall that Lyle finally ended up at that time with Tom Downey was, he was a plant.
The works manager.
He was the works manager. So everything, as the production operations were reduced out, they just let the equipment sit there. And then soon Lyle Salisbury's organization was reduced accordingly. They went back to the main plant and left me over at Plant 3. I was the only one that left over there at Plant 3 with the people up Bill Murphy's group. We were to get rid of the equipment.
Okay, Bill Murphy was in accounting or something?
Yeah,
or
Bill Murphy was in the, I think he was accounting.
Tool records and all of those?
No, Bill Murphy was in, no, he worked for, I think he worked for the comptroller at that time.
Okay, all right.
I'm trying to think, Machine Tool Records, that name is, I can't recall who it was,
Okay.
but
But your job was to get rid of the...
yeah, we worked with the contractors. Commercial contractors come in out of Detroit, and they came in, and then we had to. I had probably maybe 30 to 40 people working for me, machine repair mostly. And they would identify the parts, and so that all the tooling went with each piece of machinery, and then of course it was all packaged and sent to government depots. I would imagine.
You got to group everything up and all.
Everything had to be done, yeah. But that was my activity, working with the contractors, and then of course when that job was done, why. Then the automotive started right up again, and they brought the.
Excuse me for interrupting. The jet job take the whole plant, Frank?
The jet job took the whole plant, yes.
Okay, so there wasn't any automotive going on in either of those buildings?
No.
Okay.
The first thing that started up on the automotive, as I recall, was the plating department. And that was when that was the area where the assembly was down there, the jet assembly. So that area cleared itself out fairly fast. So then the plating portion of it started at that time. The equipment started coming in, and I know Dario Ren, they moved him over, and he was the general foreman of the plating or of the machine repair group that serviced the plating area.
Okay.
Do you remember anything of the Plant 3? Was it what way it was at the jet?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Yeah. I always remember because up at the south end of the building, where they had the furnaces up there.
Okay.
They would go along and they would open those hot days. They'd open those windows along the south end, and the breeze would blow that air right through the furnaces, and then the whole darn building was just, 85 to 90 was not unusual. I mean, it was just like a Turkish bath down there. Yeah, big oven. That's what it was.
So those furnaces were way down towards the south end?
They were right at the south end.
What were we heat treating or heating?
Blades and things like that. Yeah. But that area cleared out, and then that was the area where the crankshaft started, right up in the south end there. And that was the first thing over there. And that pretty much, you know, as I recall, of Plant 3,
Now, did you keep staying on over there then?
I stayed right on, yes, I stayed right on. Lyle, he was moved back over to the main plant, and he replaced Reinbold, who I guess retired, and Lyle became the superintendent of the entire tool organization.
Which included you then?
Which included me. I still reported to him, yes. Okay. So, in 1963, I think it was, when John Dahl, who was the general foreman of the tool room over there. You remember John Dahl? Do you? Okay. John was nearing retirement, and I got along, like I say, very well with Lyle, and he and I worked together pretty good. So he brought me back over to the main plant in Building 40 as the general foreman. And then John retired shortly, maybe 6 months after that. Well, they moved him out into the area, I guess. And I worked with Lyle then until 1969, I think it was, when he retired.
Okay.
And I was fortunate that he selected me to replace him.
Okay, so then you now were the...
So then now I was then the group. So then, about that time, I shouldn't say about that time, because that had started prior to that. The differential plant had started right at the tail end of Lyle's time. And so we were picking up at Plant 2, and I think I sent Gerald McCune over there as the general foreman over there.
Prior to that, Plant 2 had been a separate entity?
Yeah, Plant 2 had been a forging plant, I guess, yeah.
And they must have had a tool room, though, at that time.
They had a machine repair operation, that was about all, which maintained their equipment. They didn't
have a tool room.
Very new tooling was something that they didn't use over there. But
with the differential plant, did you needed a different kind of a facility, or?
Oh yes, the differential plant was something that we were practically new to all of us. I mean, and we sent Jerry McCune down to Gleason's, and he spent, I'd say, over a year and a half down there. He'd go down there and work, and then, well, he came home most weekends. And at that time, we were making pilot things like blanks and sending them back to Gleason's for them to cut the teeth in there, because apparently the milling of the differential gear was something that Gleason had the patent on it, on their equipment, and they were the only ones who could do it. So we would make the blanks. I'd ship them down to Rochester, and they would cut the teeth, and then we'd send them back, and then the gear lab would take and made them and run them in cars, and you know.
And Jerry was down there all?
Jerry was down there at Gleason. But then when that program got up and we started getting the equipment in at Plant 2, of course, Jerry had, his knowledge was real, you know, very good. He picked that up and he set up the department over there with, the help of the layout group and everybody else. Well, we got the Plant 2 operation underway, the tool room part of it, but it was something entirely new to us to grind those Gleason cutters, and the precision was something that was unheard of as far as automotive work is concerned. You know, we were working with tenths there, you know, and that was something was on a production basis where you don't do.
Had that promoted some unusual problems that we were unexpected, so to speak?
Oh, I think it had, but you know, we had some very good people come in, like Andy Aku came in, and he was from Gear and Axle, and Andy did a super job there. The first man apparently that they brought in was Phillips.
Phillips.
Yeah, you remember that name.
I remember the name, yeah.
And apparently he didn't fit in with the Oldsmobile philosophy as well, and he didn't have the cooperation like Andy had got when he came in, and slowly, why, that job just got up and got going, and we did a super good job on it. But that was the starting of the Plant 2 tool room. And as I say, then Plant 3, everything will start being moved over there and machining, and we had to set up an organization over there, and we had general
Frank H. Haeger of 1725 Blair, Lansing, Michigan 48910. The recording was made on June 20th, 1990 at the Oldsmobile History Center at 4000 North Grand River by Jim Walkinshaw. This is tape number 2 of 2 tapes.
Okay.
But going back to the organization, then we also had, of course, a general foreman in Building 40 and a general foreman in the motor plant. So I had four general foremen, four. Isn't that terrible? You can't even remember how many you had. 1, 2, let's see.
Yeah. One at each of the 2 outlying plants.
Yeah.
Engine plant and down in the tool room itself?
Yeah.
Or did you have a guy that was up on the west end anywhere?
Nobody. See, really, from the tool room work was basically east from Building 40.
Okay.
Very little west. A few assembly operations there that we had to service the welding and things such as that. But other than that, right.
You generally were
Very
related
low.
to machine floor things.
Yeah. Really, our work came probably 90 to 95% from the motor plants, and that, as you say, is related pretty much to the machine floor.
What kinds of things, Frank, just cover a myriad of the things that the tool room might have done so that people get a flavor for the activities?
Well, one of the things that I thought was very instrumental, we had, as I recall, something like 30-some welders, 34 welders. We did all the welding. Okay. This was after we had been integrated with machine repair welders as well as our own. And we did all the welding throughout the plant. Anything that required to be welded, why, they would call in. We had machine Kalamazoo trucks to get them to the job and things like that. And as well as that, we also had set up a program to inspect all the settlings equipment throughout the plant, and I think there was something like at one time when we took an inventory, there was over 100 settling gauges, and they had to be maintained and things like that. So anything related to welding or welding equipment, I came through that area there. Other than the processing of it, like the art plastic thing, we had nothing to do with art plastic or anything, because he was buying equipment for the
But you were
productive.
for like repair welding, you're talking.
Repair welding or any new welding. We built
New machine, new equipment.
new equipment, fixturing, rack repair, and then all that
Would you fix a thing?
undesirable.
Crankshaft or not?
Uh,
Press cranks or not?
no. That was the press cranks. I usually went out to industrial welding.
Okay.
Those people
Those
were
big things went out.
big press parts, like crowns and things like that.
Okay, that might have got cracked or something.
Might have got cracked, would go to industrial welding.
All right.
We would do some fairly large jobs, I know. I often recall we used to get an IBM printout, and when my first experience when I was reading that printout, I saw 500 bags of charcoal. I said, where in hell can we use 500 bags of charcoal?
Big barbecue.
But I found out later that when you do a big press part or something, you have to build a fire in underneath and preheat it. And sometimes they would be welding. Well, we'd weld around the clock, up to 24 to 32 hours on a part at some time.
Because it took so much weld?
Because it took so much welding and the preheating, and they would work in teams of one welder and one standing by, and then they'd go back and forth there. And then I found out where they used the 500 bags of charcoal, because they got to keep that casting at a kind of a nice glow so that it accepts the weld.
Where in the devil did you ever heat a thing that big?
Well, we would build our box. The welders would build a box, size of this table or whatever, and
set it up in the shop there?
set it up in the shop and underneath the blowers there, and go to her.
I'll do that.
But the real large things we would send to industrial welding, crankshafts and crowns and things like that. This was kind of the intermediate kind of things, I guess you would describe. But that was one of the things that I felt that they did an excellent job. We also did all the heat treating for the dyes that the dye room made, and we used to have some very good discussions with Obie Rounds, Lawrence, of course, had left then, and Obie came on, and Obie was kind of a
Dye superintendent.
he was kind of a guy, nice guy to work with. I liked Obie, but if there was a little crack in his dye, well, we always cracked it in the heat treat. Of course, he would come over there, all fired up. Well, I would get Obie, and then one of my general foreman was L.G. Ives, and he was just as fiery as Obie. Well, you get those two together, you need a referee, I'll tell you. But there's certain things that you can do in the machining, like we would always accuse the dye group, they just took the paint off it. So you'd have to take about a 1/16 to 3/32 of an inch off to get the decarb off. And if Obie's dyes would come up soft, he'd come over there and complain that it was a miserable job of heat treating. And we'd tell him, Obie, go back and check your machining. You guys aren't machining that, you're just knocking the paint off. But that was kind of a little laughing thing that we had going between us.
Sure.
Other than, the
Did you make any machinery?
very little at that time.
Early on, did you make machinery? In the 40s when you came, were you making machinery?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really,
That
Jim.
didn't change over.
The tool making business used to be, years ago, like we'd make gauges and things such as that.
Okay.
But with the coming of the high automobile production and that way, they kind of got away from it, because then the tool making business kind of, at least our portion of it, got pulled away, and we became more of a maintenance group than we did of making new tooling.
Repair.
Yeah, a lot of the new tooling, would be go to outside contractors. We would wanted to keep more of that project type work in the tool room, and kind of it helped our manpower situation. But there was such an influx of repair coming in from the motor plants. I mean, it was, and of course we were doing all the machining for the machine repair department, as well as the tooling for ourselves. So, and then Plant 2 and Plant 3 had very limited capacities, and in some cases they didn't even have the right kind of equipment, so things like that had to be sent over to Building 40 to be machined.
Was there anything, Frank, that you figured you couldn't do in the tool room? Were there kinds of things you had to ship out? Other than these big cranks we talked about.
Yeah, the big cranks, and there's certain, really, I offhand I can't think of anything, but I'm sure there must have been some isolated things that we couldn't do. We did have a pretty good versatile equipment there to do most things, if it was within the capacities of the machine.
Yeah.
Like the thread grinders and things like that. We could, very few tool rooms had thread grinding, and we did. We had thread grinders, and we did a good job on thread grinding.
Okay.
I mentioned Gleason milling.
Yeah.
That is something that we couldn't do because we didn't have the equipment to do it.
Okay.
And other than size that were beyond our capacities, well, we could do just about anything that I know of that had to be done in the tooling industry.
Now, computers related to machinery were starting to happen somewhere.
Yeah,
in there. What was
they started just about the time I was leaving.
Was that when it was coming in?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually. The numerical control equipment, I bought several pieces of that.
All right.
That was kind of in its infancy, and probably the last 5 years I was there, we bought that. Last 5 years as a superintendent.
Okay.
So that would have been 1975 when that came on board.
All right. You retired in 80?
80, yeah.
Okay.
But
What did that kind of machinery do for you?
well, it took the operator error out, and you could always reproduce so simple by just putting a tape in there, and it would do the same thing that a skilled operator would do, only it'd do it twice as fast. That's all. And
Did people have any funny feelings about those things?
no, I think they were just curious about it, and really they understood that the taping and the programming of it, that started to become an issue. You know, the UAW, they get into it, and then the people was doing the programming, and then the design group, why they were wondering about the programming and, you know, that we were doing down there. But slowly, why it got integrated. Gary Van Orsdal was excellent to work with on that. He did really a nice job. And as far as the equipment, why, you know, they practically have to, I always felt that there was, you had to maintain a balance on that tape stuff, because most of the stuff was the type of work we were getting from the motor plant, like they'd want one or want two or something.
Okay.
Not economically wise to have tape, and I felt after that, after I left it, they went overboard on tape control, because I didn't think that they had the work. But I'm really not in a good position, because I don't know what what was coming over into them. But they did hit it awful heavy. I know that. At least I think that if some of the other top supervision was maybe a little bit more wiser on the machining, they might have had a little problem getting some of that things that they got in there. But, you know, we all I think we've all purchased some pieces of equipment that we weren't too proud of from time to time. I always recall Truxell. He bought something for Plant 3, and it was the damnedest thing, and it didn't work out anyway. It was, oh boy, that program that he had over there.
This was after the jet program?
Yeah, it was after the jet program. Jeez, I can't remember those things, but but I know he always say whenever I wanted anything for the tool room, well, can't you use that piece of equipment? Well, the thing was just about half the size of this room, you know, which would take about more room than the tool room had available. It wouldn't be worth a darn, but he was trying to bury that one. But I think we all had those kind of pieces of equipment around the plant. But we also had some good ones too. I mean, some that was.
Seems like, Frank, you used to have old Motor Works #1 machine in the tool room, didn't you? Do you remember that thing? The so-called first machine?
Yeah, the old shear.
It was a shear.
Yep,
yeah.
#1.
Yeah.
That's correct, Jim. The OMW #1. And that thing was rebuilt so many times, and I'll say it was just as good as anything on the market.
It was.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah, I think it's still over there. I bet you it is. It's still over there. Yeah, that was. You know, you kind of forget about those things, but.
You had some pretty big old lathes too, as I remember. Some big, huge lathes.
Yeah, there was that old gap lathe down there, but you know.
It seemed like it would turn apart 10 or 12 or 15 feet long.
Yeah, that's true. That was one that we inherited, I think, from the machine repair group, that gap lathe. But it was, as far as the company is concerned, they had been better off to get rid of it right away and send anything out that they needed a machine like that, and contracted it. But
and you had a huge planer, as I remember.
Yeah.
Right next to the stairs.
Yeah. That wasn't really too big a planer. I mean,
okay.
it was That was a machine that came from the tool, or from the trade school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was one of the machines that was purchased for the trade school. Yeah, that old Cincinnati open side planer. Yeah, remember that, maybe? Well.
See, and you were mentioning when we were standing in the office about all of the candy and cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
Machine things down by the stairway.
Yeah, that was, like I say, we had the first machines, I think. And some of you want me just to go ahead and relay?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, some of the people from upstairs, some of the engineers, used to slip down, and of course it was a congregation point there, and it didn't take too long after we mentioned it to the right person for them to get machines upstairs. But it worked out now. They tell me, that they not only have machines where they have microwaves, and they have the whole thing. Yeah, I can't believe it. I always recall when we used to have those safety inspections. We'd walk around through the departments, and of course you were just like an old police dog. Then you could sniff a coffee pot, hidden underneath in a cabinet or something like that. And of course that was a no-no at that time.
No coffee pots allowed?
No coffee pots, no nothing. And radios were unheard of, and now, of course, apparently is an accepted thing.
So all of those things were not allowed?
Nothing. Nothing.
If you wanted a cup of coffee, what did you do?
You waited till your lunch hour.
You waited till lunch hour?
Yeah. Yep.
Could people bring their own thermos jug full of coffee and that sort of stuff?
I think they did, yes. Yeah. I'm sure they used to stitch a little bit, but if the guy was a good operator and he'd use a little common sense about it, if he poured a cup of coffee and kept his machine running, why, nobody bothered him. But it was people that would, misuse it or somebody like that. Well, then you would have to see whether you get them back on track, that's all. But all in all,
Do you remember any of the superintendents you dealt with, Frank? And any differences in how people did their thing?
Actually, like I say, Lawrence Ginther, great guy. Obie I liked to work with Obie. And Dick Richards, he was a class guy too.
He came along after?
Yeah, he was after Obie, but all that die group was very, very fine people. And really, we used to, there's a few superintendents that were easier to work with than others. Like Harold Houghton, yeah, Harold Houghton.
Okay.
He was kind of difficult. And of course Doug Tracy followed Harold, and Doug was rather difficult. He had his, rules, and the way he ran his business, he did a good job. But he was kind of hard-nosed about things.
Demanding? Is that
demanding. But Doug, when he started as a superintendent, just about the same time I did, so I knew that he was learning too, excuse me. But we were having a lot of problems at that time, in the motor plant. That was the first. We were getting up near that point where we needed engines, you know, like the first million
Yeah.
engines, and we used to have meetings there practically every afternoon with the top people. Mooney used to catch a lot of those meetings. Bob Cook, he sat in on some of them.
Really struggling.
And we were struggling. And Doug, he was doing a good job, and everybody involved, all the engineering, I mean, Pete Mitchell's group, and the Methods group, and one guy I really felt that was a super good operator is Judd Cordes. Judd was just a fine man to work with, just super. Andy was, he was a good man to work with. Rex, of course,
Rex Carter.
Rex, nice fellow to work with. Of course, I knew Rex from before I was a superintendent, and before when he was still with foreman. So he was a little hard-nosed, but we got along fine. I still get along with him all right because I play golf with him every day.
Can you, Frank, over that period from 40s until the 80s when you left, did the approach to management change at all? Did you see any changes in that, and what might they have been?
Well, I think that they were a little wiser. You know, when I think back about when I first came there, Tom Downey he was a very knowledgeable man and a hard man, but a good manager, I'm told. And I didn't have that much to do with him, only what I'm told and what little I knew about him. Then, of course, Bob Rollis, he came after there, and Bob was a little bit more, I don't know what I want to say. He didn't. I don't think he got quite involved with the shop end of it as the other part of the job that he had to do. He understood that, I'm sure, and he had felt that he had people in the shop to know that. And but as you say, I think that things were not quite as firm. I mean, every management man operated a little bit different, and maybe just as now, where they have relaxed a little bit from what they used to be. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. You know, maybe their method of management is great, but I also Walt Spar. I enjoyed working with Walt and Bill
Rasmussen?
Bill Rasmussen. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and the laboratory group was all real good. I enjoyed them. Really, I don't know if I had to go out and pick a job or anything. I don't know what else where I could have had a better one. For my knowledge in that, I think that I was well compensated, and I am very, very pleased when people say, "What did you do?" I said, "I'm retired from General Motors, and it's a damn good program. I'll tell you, it's super."
Frank, union relations over that time, did you see anything there that would be changed or different?
Yes, the union came on real strong after they kind of got their foot in the door. You know, they came on stronger and stronger, and more demanding about things. And really, I think that they're responsible for a lot of the things that are not as so desirable within the corporation right now. there was some very good people within the union too that became very good supervisors. But it's a tough job, you know.
You must have had a special union rep for tool guys, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Each skilled trades group, like, well, the die group and, you know, the engineering, product engineering trades, in the tool division trades, the die division trades, and some portions of the machinery, the plant engineering people were all under one committee man.
Oh, okay.
All under one committee man.
All right.
But they flip-flopped back and forth there for a while, but they...
Did those people, did you have to deal with those people directly, or did you have kind of a methodology?
Well, when I was a general foreman, usually everything, I wouldn't talk to them until they got talked through the first line supervisors, the foreman.
Yeah.
When I was a general foreman, that was my policy. You'd have to talk to that first line supervisor first, and then if they couldn't come to an agreement, why then we would, as a general foreman, I would be glad to talk to them. As a superintendent now, I didn't get too involved with it. Only after it got beyond that point and got over to the personnel or labor relations group in Building 62, then I would get involved with it at that time. But the Plant 2 thing, of course, was probably the hardest thing to crack as far as the union is concerned. On account of they had their own union over there, and they had a really good man, Bob Walker. He was a terrific committee man. And I've had many supervisors over there tell me that about some things that he had. All right. But you were starting a new plant with different thinkings, because they were going from a forging type operations into a machining type.
Must have been major.
And it was major, and I was fortunate, and I had a strong general foreman over there, McCune, and Aku was a strong production superintendent, and that really made and Bob Walker was, like I say, was the committee man, and it made the transition real good. But I recall a couple things that Walker there, I know he would go to the foreman and he'd say, "You've got a man that's out of line down there," and he says, "If you want to straighten him out, I will not write a grievance against him." Yeah.
So he was really quite helpful.
Yes, he was very helpful, and he did an excellent job. But he also was hard-nosed. He raised hell with labor relations, you know, about things, and he got everything that I guess that he felt that his people needed.
Did over that continuum, did the union reps, or did you find union reps that were less likely to work with managers as you went through those years?
Most of them were pretty good. Most of them, they wanted to work with
They
it.
wanted to work
Yes,
with us.
most of them did. Occasionally you would run into one, and you know, that was negative on everything,
Yeah.
and he could only see one side of the thing.
Yeah.
But most cases, well, the guys were pretty decent, I thought.
How would you, just if you looked at Oldsmobile's labor relations in general, how would How would you characterize that, Frank?
Well, they had some good people, very good people in labor relations. I thought that our labor relations department was very adequate. There was a few people in that was really they were in the wrong job, and kind of they were the wrong type of person. A couple names I could mention, but I guess I won't bother. But if you needed help, they were there usually. Sam Donahue, I always thought Sam was very good. Harold Cutler was good. Harold, he was a much better labor relations man than he was a personnel director. Harold didn't. But he knew the labor relations book. He was good at that. He had a hard thing to follow when you try to follow Bill Mahoney, you know, as a personnel man, because Bill, he had everybody hornswoggled. He knew that was his way, and Harold had to follow that, and it was a tough act to follow. I'll say that. But Roger Lee, I remember Roger. He always was very, very helpful. And
did the Tool Room, Frank, have any annual outings or get-togethers or those kinds of?
No, we didn't, and I don't know why. I understand they do now, but why, I don't know. I guess everybody was so involved in their own little world that they just didn't do it. That's all. And well, you know, of course, at that time, with that executive club was very active, and there we used to have many meetings, but they kind of went away. But whether the hourly people did or not, that I don't know. Now they might have, Jim. But all in all, I'd say there was no social.
How about, did the Tool Room have the overtime? Was that a kind of a ritual, or?
Yeah, pretty much so, yeah. Tool Room was noted, I guess. We were second to the die room. Well, maybe we were third in kind of plant engineering. It was pretty good too. But we did it. We had a lot of overtime. Of course, there was a lot of things that had to be. We were in conjunction with the machine repair department, where they would tear down a piece of equipment and they had to bring it to us to do work. And we had pretty heavy. Saturday was kind of you know, we'd be probably 75% of our people would be working Saturdays. On Sundays, maybe 10% or something like that.
How about hot jobs? Is that kind of?
Oh yeah, well, you got your own systems, you know, for following jobs. Everybody, I guess they kind of felt that we should have had a different system, but I felt that the system we had was as good as any, because I went over to Buick at the time, and I know they were telling me what a wonderful system they had, so I went over there one day to check it out, and I found out that they had a wonderful system with an IBM set up, and they spent a lot of dollars, but they had their backup system. They still maintained their backup system, which was identical to ours. Yeah, so I got to know the superintendent over to Buick quite well, and from his comments why I felt we at least saved the company a little money at the time. But I don't know, you can spend so much money. Now it's all computerized. Now, I don't understand what they're doing these days. When I go over there, I mean, you know, I ask, well, what is that room? Well, that's a computer room. What do you do with that? Well, yeah, they got many of those kind of places around there. But I guess it's all right. But like I say, well, my time at Oldsmobile was so good. I mean, and kind of I worked for great guys. Pete was a fine guy to work for. Yeah, Pete Mitchell. And of course, as I mentioned before, Salisbury was a super good guy. I don't know, Jim. I find myself repeating myself.
Any, what I would call any peculiar happenings or odd instances that you could think back over that might have happened in the tool room?
Oh.
Somebody did something?
Oh, I know, really. I guess I can, you know, when I think back, I remember how it used to be. You know, we used to park right around the building.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Didn't you have a fence around the plant?
Yeah, there was a fence around the plant, but we used to park right, when I say we, I say that with some qualifications, and kind of everybody didn't park, but like, going back to the days when we had our, when we started that trade school, why we used to play ball in the inside of the plant right there by building 33 during our lunch hours. Okay. And when I think of now the tool room, what it used to be, when I remember people, well, John Dykester, he was the factory manager at the time. He was the type of person that would never come through the front door. He'd always come through the back door.
Really?
Yeah, he was kind of an unusual guy. I remember that we used to have on the south, the northwest corner of the building used to be sliding doors, and right inside of that used to be what we call a slotter, which is a machine to cut keyways.
Oh, okay.
And when you work on that machine, where you get, and it has a 360-degree revolving table and a ram that works vertically, and you have to really be concentrated. It wouldn't be not unusual if you're working there on a job, and John Dykester would come park his car right there by those sliding doors, and he'd come in there, and you'd turn around, and he might be standing there looking to see what you were doing. Yeah, a very unusual man.
How about Sharon Skinner? Would you ever, was he a guy that you would see or not?
I'm not very much of a Skinner. I knew who he was, and he was occasionally he'd come through the plant, but I never got real close to him. Yeah. I guess he was a submarine commander or something, wasn't he?
Somewhere,
during part of the war, and when he came, all of a sudden he appeared, you know. Yep, he appeared. Yep.
Okay.
But there was, you know, a lot of very knowledgeable people when, you know, came through that tool room, and of course they would all be going up to, well, the planning department was up building 40, so, you know, they'd come through there and on their way up to building 40. But they're that building 40 is one building that it just seems like it's never changed You remember when there used to be a cafeteria in the front end of Building 40? Don't you? When we first went over there, Building 40 there at the north end, Russ Estelle, he used to have the cafeteria up there, and I remember we used to go up there for 35 cents. We'd have meatloaf, and I'll tell you, it was one of the best meals you ever could get a hold of. 35 cents, whole meal. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, vegetables, milk, and the whole bit. When I first went over there to Building 40, why, he had that.
That was on the second.
That was where the laboratory was. Yeah, in the north end.
All right.
Yeah.
Now that must eventually got taken out of there.
Yeah. Well,
Sometime during-
apparently they. Estelle was a pretty good friend of some of the people over in Building 60 at that time. It was Building 60.
Yeah.
And he had some kind of an arrangement with, that they contracted the cafeteria out to
Okay.
him. He also had a cafeteria down well, where the Michigan National Bank now is located.
Oh, downtown.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you know where the Elks used to be down there, yeah. Well, he was a good friend of Mike Menno's and Bud Brandel's and Bill Mahoney and that, and he had that business, and he did a good job. I mean, when he had it.
There must have been more than that one cafeteria in the plant, wasn't there? At that
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't believe the one that was over there in 33.
That wasn't there yet.
No, no. That was the only.
People mostly brown bag it in those days, or
I
lunch
guess,
buckets?
yeah, it was kind of a split there.
Like when you worked, did you bring a sack?
I usually brown bagged it. Once in a while I'd eat up in the cafeteria. But I got married, you know, when I was, I think my second 6 months.
Oh.
When I was getting $18 a week, I think I got married, so I didn't have a lot of money. Of course, at that time, $5 went a long ways too. I'll say that. For a long time. Yeah. But the plant is really, when you think about some of the changes there, I mean, you don't think about them too often, but I remember the old power plant over there with the smokestack. Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah.
When did you start there?
I started in '53, but I've only seen that in pictures.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember when they took that dude down.
Were you there the day they chopped it down?
I think I was. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 53. Well, okay, so you were there just 13 years after I was. So, yeah. But you probably know more of the changes around that plant than what I do. And kind of you.
That's not the.
Huh?
That's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is what you were doing.
Yeah, I know. You got around pretty good.
Well, are we grounded in the ground, Frank?
I think so, Jim. I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
It's
Well, you
worth
did a nice job.
worth mentioning. Well,
Your half an hour somehow dribbled down into.
yeah,
right away.
I know. Like you say, I can see how it gets away from you.
Okay, well,
but-
I'll cut that thing off unless you think of something.
No, I think that pretty well covers it, Jim.
Okay.